All right, it's being recorded. So I'll be co-presenting this with Susan McCracken from the Career Development Center as well, and she'll be joining us at around the 12:30 mark to share some of her wisdom as well. But I will introduce her to get started. So you can see this is me, and this was actually from, my picture is actually from the trip that I went on back in 2018, I think it was. It feels like just last year, but it was a bit ago. And it was an amazing experience. And I had I'm from Pennsylvania, so I had been to New York City and had seen a couple of shows on Broadway. I was very heavy in theater, high school and college and into my early 20s. And so, but being able to go on that senior trip, which I know you maybe haven't been able to go. And so I'm rubbing it in your face a little bit, but hopefully you'll get the chance. But it really was an opportunity to be able to, an awesome opportunity to be able to really get to know the world, the industry, and the ins and outs of that. So that was really awesome. And I worked closely with Paulette the past couple of years as well to come into the capstone courses. So I know that you have seen me before potentially talking a little bit about those resumes and cover letters and interviewing. And so hopefully we'll be able to touch on a couple different topics today. And then Susan, she is my boss lady. So she's the director of the Career Development Center. And she's also, you can see here, a total drama mama, right? So her daughter is currently at UNC Chapel Hill. She just finished her first year in theater arts. And she's very, very involved with, she was involved with the Playmakers when her kids were in school. And then also she's on the board for the Appalachian Theater. She's a former trustee of the North Carolina Humanities Council. She's Keith's neighbor. And so she's very, very involved with the theater world as well. So hopefully you'll be able to glean a little information. And like I said in my little intro, although didn't necessarily pursue the industry professionally, I do feel like having had the different experiences that I have, I can speak to some of the skills and experiences that help that you build in the theater world. So I want to kind of introduce you to some of the things that we're going to talk about at different points today, but some of the things that you can think about or that we're going to consider today is really thinking about how long you can search before having to take another job, right? And so I think it's important there for you to recognize what your financial obligations are. Some of you may be able to get right into the theater world or whatever part of that industry that you're interested in going into directly after graduation or shortly after. But sometimes it might be a little bit of a struggle depending on where you're looking to be geographically and what kind of other obligations you may have. So thinking about what are those financial obligations? And then also, how do you keep your skills sharp while you're searching, right? And so that might be if you're not working in the industry that you want to be in right away, perhaps you're volunteering at a local theater or taking some classes or doing some professional development in order to be able to keep your skills sharp while you're searching for those opportunities. And you also want to consider who is in your network or your professional circle, right? And so think about people that you've met here at Appalachian, your faculty, connections from your capstone courses, the alumni, right? Think about some of the social media pages. We've got like LinkedIn, and you can make connections there. Also the alumni Facebook page and those professional organizations in the theater world, right? And there are a ton of them. And I know Susan will chat a little bit more about that towards the end today. So those are some things that we're going to touch on and some things I want you to kind of keep in mind and think about as you are listening to this presentation today, but then also as you go through your search process and what that might look like. But the first thing I think that we want to talk about and think about is how we market these skills and experiences that you've gained, both in the classroom, in the extra or co-curricular activities that you've had, whether that's clubs and organizations or internships or student teaching or what it may be, and how you're able to market those. The first thing I think we need to think about is if we're career ready, right? So I've got this worksheet that I'm going to send to you in the chat so that you also have access to it. Oh, my cat's being cranky. Okay. So you should have access to that Google Doc now through that chat. And so you can follow along with me or keep it for a rainy day. But so we've got these career competencies that we think about in regards to students being career ready. And these come a lot from what employers are looking for when they're hiring a new college graduate. And so some of the things that they want that you're able to gain within the experiences that you have here are critical thinking or problem solving, that communication skill, the teamwork, right? Being familiar with technology, some leadership, professionalism, career management, and then that global or intercultural fluency, right? And so you can see here in this, we've got a definition of what that is, and then an example of how you may have gained that experience. So I think that this is really helpful when you're trying to reflect on how have you gained these competencies and these skills, and how can you market those when you are writing a resume or a cover letter or talking in an interview or answering questions at an audition or what that may look like. So you could see like critical thinking. So the definition is to practice sound reasoning and analytical skills to make decisions and overcome problems. And an example of that might be manage time commitments and various responsibilities when the organization is short-staffed, right? Or maybe you have been part of, well, Hannah, right? Like working as the office assistant, right? I'm sure there are a lot of times where something comes across your desk and you're like, all right, who needs to know about this? What do I have to do to respond to this? Or how can I make this better, right? So definitely thinking again about what these competencies are and how you can demonstrate them versus just talking about them. So sometimes I'll see on a resume that these are just in a skills section, and I don't think that that does enough, right, to be able to talk about how you've gained these competencies. So the second page of this flyer worksheet, if you will, is an opportunity for you to reflect on these competencies, to give yourself a rating, and then to think about how you can improve this competency either as you're finishing out the next week, right? Or throughout the summer, and as you're looking to thinking about what are those next couple of steps that you're interested in the industry. So you don't have to do this now, but I just encourage you to definitely kind of think about it or reflect on it. And then also on the bottom here, there's some resources for you. So it may be a little late for us to visit the ACT office or to get engaged with the clubs or organizations, but thinking about what did you do while you were here, I think is going to be really important. And then of course, there's your career coach, right? So you can always schedule an appointment with me and we can talk through some of this. And even after graduation, the Career Development Center is available for you. So you can reach out through Handshake, which is our career management system. And Susan will talk a little bit more about that. Or send me an email and I'll share my contact information with you before the end of today. So the other thing I wanted to kind of walk through a little bit is an actual physical job description, and maybe thinking about how we pull from these job descriptions and market those things that we've done. So I just made these into Google Docs, and you'll all have access to this presentation, and everything is linked in here, so you'll have access to these docs. But so this is a costume internship that I pulled from Handshake, and so it's currently available, open and available. But you can read through the job description, and there are a couple things that maybe you want to focus on. So the first thing they say is they're looking for someone who's motivated, confident, and creative. And so think about, like, how are you motivated? Talk about why this internship speaks to you. Show motivation through examples of work you've done, scholarships you've worked for, the part-time work that you've done while you were in school, or the extra things that you have done, right? The next part is they're asking for the opportunity, or this will also have the opportunity to assist or fully design costumes for different kinds of different groups, right, within the theater world. So you can maybe talk a little bit about how have you designed these costumes, and especially for kids, because it looks like it's a lot of youth. Can you create a pattern? Can you sew by hand or by a machine? What have you made? And maybe do you have a portfolio of the work that you can share? The next, it talks a little bit about who you'll be working with. And so I don't know these people off the top of my head, but do you, right? Have you been able to research them a little bit and seen any of their work? or what their style is like, and can you speak to that? And then it also talks about the kind of costumes that they've designed. So what kind of events have you created costumes for? And then again, this is where a portfolio might come in handy. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then they talk about their shows that they're doing for the 21-22 season. So have you worked on a show like this before? Are you familiar with them or something that's similar to these shows? Because down here you can also see that they talk a little bit about, they do 6 plays, 3 musicals, readers theater, and multiple children's shows. So what kind of work have you done? What does a season consist of at app that you've been involved with? Those are some good things to pull from there. They also talk about they're the largest nonprofit community theater. So you have the opportunity here to talk a little bit about the kind of theaters you've worked with. And are you familiar with working in a nonprofit world? And then a big thing I think that COVID has changed, right, is a lot of people are talking about the health and safety of their communities. And they go through the steps that they have taken in order to make their theater and their work area a little bit more COVID friendly, if you will. And so thinking about what your pandemic pivot looked like and how you and your colleagues have stayed safe during this past season, what have you done or what has app done for the health and well-being of your current community? So being able to take some of these experiences that you've had through the pandemic and being able to talk about how you are familiar with what they're doing, right? Or what kind of measures need to be taken in order to keep the community safe. Another position that I pulled out is this amphitheater technician. And so you can, when you read through here, you see that the job is a little bit of everything, right? So even this first sentence, the amphitheater technician is responsible for running scene changes, assist with backstage activities, set pieces, props, and equipment, retail and concessions, daily cleaning and maintenance. So talk a little bit about the well-rounded experiences that you had here at Appalachian or within the theater department, in productions, classes, clubs. And so since this is going to be a little bit of everything for you, it might be helpful for you to talk a little bit about all of the things that you've done. You can see that you may be asked to be an extra. And so have you acted before? Have you taken an acting class? Did you act in high school or college? You also may be asked to be ready to assist in emergency situations. So what does that look like for you? Are you certified in CPR or first aid? Here they talk again about the stocking and maintenance of the amphitheater concessions, retail, and the welcome center. And so what part-time positions do you have? Have you worked in food service before? Have you had a retail job? What are some of those transferable skills to show that you're comfortable working in that kind of an atmosphere? And then here they use this exact language, competencies, and these are basically pulled right from that worksheet that I showed you, right? That teamwork, that initiative, that attention to detail. So like I said, these are coming right out of that worksheet. So talking about how you can demonstrate these versus just listing them. And maybe you're talking a little bit about how you collaborated with the director and the crew to design a set and bring together the materials, right? And buy the materials for that. Or talked about incorporating sustainability into the theater and using recycled or reused materials. And so again, you want to be able to talk a little bit more about the competencies instead of just listing them out and saying, I'm a good communicator or I have initiative, right? So I think that those are some important things to think about. So I'm going to stop there for a second and see what kind of questions there might be.
Carolyn, what is NACE?
Oh, sure. So that is the National Association for Colleges and Employers. That's my big professional organization. Thanks for asking that, Keith.
So I have a question, Geraldine, about, so I love how you kind of pulled things out of those to address and gave ideas on how to address them. Is there, but it strikes me like to thoroughly address all those things would take a fair amount of text in a cover letter. Is it okay, do you think, for like an entry level position to make your cover letter go more than a page?
Well, I would encourage you to stay to a page, and that's really because at first glance, the recruiter or the person, the hiring manager, whoever is reading your information, they're really just kind of skimming to see that you have that knowledge. I think if you can incorporate so all of that from that job description, some of those might already be in your resume and you wouldn't necessarily have to reiterate it into a cover letter. So you may choose just to pick like 3 or 4 of the big things that you know you want to talk about or share a story about. I think that it would be if your cover letter went over a page, it has to be like really all very relevant and very good information. I find sometimes if you write more than a page, maybe there's some places that you just rambled when you were typing up your letter, and you can go back and edit that for brevity and clarity. So I would, your cover letter, it's your resume. So when push comes to shove, like you got to get yourself out there the way that you have to get yourself out there. But I would encourage you to keep it to a page.
Okay. And then maybe just revisit your resume and make sure that the things that you weren't able to cover in your cover letter kind of pop out.
Yeah,
resume.
And I think especially like thinking about those competencies in particular, like you can easily create a bullet to explain that communication skill or to explain that collaboration piece of it, and then that will come through in that bullet versus having to in that bullet in your resume versus having to maybe elaborate more in your cover letter about that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Well, I will continue on, but please again feel free to stop if you have a question. So I want to touch a little bit about your online presence and what that looks like as well, and your digital footprint, right? So your digital footprint is basically the information about you that's out there on the internet as a result of online activity that you may or may not be aware of, right? So the first thing I would say is get in like an incognito browser or something like a friend's computer that you're not signed into things on, and Google yourself and see what comes up. You might be surprised, or you might be like, no, that's exactly what I expected to come up. I know there was one time I Googled myself on my work computer because I was going to show a class, and it came up exactly like I wanted it to come up, and I was like, perfect. And then I Googled myself on that classroom computer, and my speeding ticket from Wilkes County was the first thing that came up, and I was like, speeding ticket isn't the worst thing in the world, but I wasn't expecting that to come up in the middle of this class. So Google yourself. But think about, how do you present yourself in your personal social media, your professional social media, and then maybe even in a portfolio or a personal website. So again, I'm going to share some examples with you. I have a professional LinkedIn account. I also use Twitter professionally, and Instagram. And Instagram I use a little bit more as my portfolio, so I'll show you that one. But your LinkedIn could be a really great place for you to be able to elaborate on some of the work that you've done. Because whereas sometimes you feel confined to maybe a page or so when you're doing your resume or your cover letter, LinkedIn will let you go on and on and on, right? And so this could be a good opportunity for you to go in depth and share a little bit more information. You also have the opportunity to be able to link to LinkedIn. So if you have photos or a website or an example of work that you've done that you would like to share within a specific section, you can do that on LinkedIn and think of it as maybe like a baby portfolio. So LinkedIn is a really great place for you to be able to put things that might not be on your resume anymore too. So my graduate assistantship was 100 years ago. That's no longer on my resume, but it's in my LinkedIn. My volunteer experience, right? That's not on my resume anymore either. And so thinking about some of the things that are still important, right? Because I volunteer with a sorority, which is a part of student affairs and the higher education experience. So it's relevant, but it's not necessarily the most important thing to put on my resume. So thinking about things that can be on this LinkedIn page, and that'll be a really great place for you to be able to build a profile and then be able to make those connections. Now I have that personal Facebook page, right? Which I know is not necessarily the cool thing anymore, but I'm of the age that it was really cool. So I still have mine. And you can see that is definitely a different feel than that LinkedIn page, right? Like my cover photo is me and my niece. My profile picture is definitely not a headshot. And so in here, you're going to be able to see, well, you won't because we're not friends, but I keep this very much just for my family and my close friends, right? So as a student or a colleague, we'll connect on LinkedIn, no problem. I'll follow you on Twitter, absolutely. But Facebook, that's just for me and my friends, right? And so you also want to make sure that if that's going to be a place for you and just you and your friends or your family, that your privacy settings are set up well. And then also still don't share things that you wouldn't want an employer or your grandmother to see, right? And then that Instagram that I had mentioned. So a portfolio is a really great opportunity for you to be able to share experiences and to really show the work that you've done. I don't have an actual website or portfolio. I use Instagram instead. And so I have my own little tag here that I tag all of my posts in. And this is all professional. So if you were to Google Geraldine Mitchell Instagram, you would see this one and you would see all of them and you can easily follow me. And then you'd see that there's another one. And that's like my Facebook with just my friends and family. But this is going to be very heavily the work that I'm doing with the Career Development Center and professionally, so that when somebody goes to look and see my resume and they see my portfolio or my Instagram account, they're going to be able to see me in action versus just the words that I have on my resume or my cover letter. And so I think that something like this can be a really great way for you to be able to show the work that you've done. And I even have a little post about my ability to be able to travel down to New York City and the work that I was able to do. Down to, up to, over to, right? Whatever, geography. So I think that recognizing what your online presence looks like is going to be very important as well. And then of course, because we're in a virtual world right now, you want to think about your remote interview and making sure that you're taking that into consideration, or taking the fact that it's remote, but still considering it an actual interview. Sometimes people get a little bit more casual, especially because we've lived online for the past year or so. So when you're on a remote interview, you want to make sure that you are dressed just as though you were interviewing in person, that you know the technology. So although we've been on Zoom, they may ask you to do a WebEx or something else. And so making sure that you've played with that technology a little bit beforehand. And if you live with people, pets, or children, being able to find a quiet place to do this interview is going to be very important. So I definitely encourage you to really think about what your interview looks like, what your background looks like, and how you're presenting yourself in this remote interview. And the last little piece I wanted to talk about, Susan's joined us, but I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment, are student loans and some of these questions that may come up because of COVID, right? And so these are some of those frequently asked questions about COVID and federal loans, COVID and educational loans, having graduated and the grace period or the grace period is over. So I'm really excited and proud of our financial aid office because they have the answers that you might need. And so I will send this link in the chat as well, although again, it is linked on the presentation. But the answers to your student loan questions because of COVID, these are all here for you to be able to answer or to get the answer to be able to see the different websites that they'll encourage you to go to and talk to. But then also your ability to be able to speak with your financial aid counselor before you leave is going to be important as well. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And like I said, I will send that over in a chat. So I will pause again here to see if there are Any questions for me before I hand this over to Susan?
Thank you, Geraldine. This has been terrific.
All right, Susan, take it away.
All right, Geraldine, do you mind to drive and I'll let you know when to advance?
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. All right, so we can advance. So thanks folks for letting me join a little bit late. I had something I could not, I had to deal with before another meeting before I could join you. So Geraldine, we can go on to the one that I think is like the 5 tips. Well, let's start with this one. And then we'll get to our 5 tips. So one thing I think that is important to keep in mind is that we always have, well, maybe not always, but we often have our image of what our real goal is. I really want to be in this place. I really want this job. And sometimes, whether it's a COVID year or not a COVID year, that first choice materializes, but more times than not, our first choice is not always what we get. And so one of the things that I think is important for folks to think about is to not give up on what your first choice, your plan A is. That's really important. And that's kind of your true north to keep you anchored and focused. But it doesn't mean that if you do something that might be plan B, that you have abandoned plan A. And I love this quote about opportunity. And I was specifically looking for one that came from someone who is in the acting world. But this is really true, is opportunity doesn't make itself available to people unless they are already prepared and they can take advantage of that. So Geraldine, we can go to the next slide. So there are 5 we can call them job strategies, but I think they're also kind of life strategies for you, but things that I think hopefully are a little smaller bite size that can help you all as you are working towards your career path and what your first professional position is going to be. And I'm going to go through each one of these. So the first one is around connecting and staying connected. And Geraldine, we can go on to the next slide. So this, I can't tell you how important it is to really build your team, to build your cast, to build the people who are going to be there to support you. They're going to be the folks who will give you the very honest feedback. And these are the people who are going to help boost you when you're feeling like you really need boosted. And that is true for me. I am way further in my career than y'all are now, but the people that I have forged these relationships with are folks who are my trusted colleagues and friends. So how can you do this? One, and Geraldine, I know has probably touched on this a little bit earlier, and you've heard it in your capstone class, but these alumni connections and informational interviews. I will tell you, I have a friend, a colleague right now who is in her 30s. She'd been working on campus for several years and was just thinking, I'm curious about what else might be out there for me. So she just started doing some informational interviews to find out about what people did so that she could start to kind of map out what she might want to do next. And lo and behold, one of the folks that she did the informational interview with said, we'd like to talk to you a little bit more. Can my colleague join the next time we do this informational interview? And 2 meetings later, she was offered a job in Boone with a really awesome company that has room for growth. So that's what informational interviews can lead to. They help you forge a relationship that's personal in the sense that you let someone get to know who it is you are as a person, not necessarily chummy, but to really know who it is you are so that they can identify opportunities and send them your way. Geraldine's already talked about LinkedIn, same with your handshake profile. People that you've met, I can't tell you how many times we hear employers or alumni who have joined us this year on panels, and we were actually just counting them up. I mean, we have easily had 100 people outside of the university involved in our career meetups this year How many times I hear them say, no one followed up with me. It's flattering to them if you hear somebody speak and you contact them. What I tell students is reach out to them. If they don't respond right away, reach out a second time. For me personally, often I'll get that email and I'm like, oh, I really want to respond, but I want to take time to think about what I'm going to say. And then it gets below the line in my inbox and I forget about it. So I don't take offense of 2 emails. So if you don't hear the first time, follow back up with the second one. If you don't hear after the second one, just move on. Don't underestimate your friends, your faculty, and not just the faculty in your department. You don't know what faculty member you may have who was out of your department, whose son or daughter works in the performing arts. So letting people know that you're looking for something, letting them know what you generally want to do and where you want to be will be helpful. And all of this is to build your support team that's not only going to help you get your first job, but they're going to help you with advancement, and they're going to be the people who are there to support you for your whole career. So Geraldine, we can go to the next slide. So be flexible, but be smart. I want to, oh, Geraldine, you may have to do this to get, well, let's see, can I, yeah, I can get to it, I think, to the reality check, or you may have to do that. But let's see, let's go ahead and click on that reality check link if we can. Now, here's where I do need, this is the interactive part of our presentation. So I need one person who would be willing to be the person to answer these questions so we can see exactly how much money you need to make to live the life that you envision. So I know we've got some students on the call. Would anyone be willing, or shall I volunteer someone? I'd love to have a participant volunteer.
I can do it.
Okay, great, Hannah. Thank you. All right, so Hannah, first question, where are you gonna live?
Is this like future goals or?
Let's say are you a senior right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let's say this is within the next 6 months.
Okay. I guess shared apartment in a, I'm moving to Matthews, which is like a closer
Okay.
to the Charlotte area. So I guess small city.
Yeah, let's do that. It won't be as expensive as being in Uptown. That's true. Okay, so are you gonna have roommates?
Yes, I'll have 2 roommates.
Okay, great. That will help. Transportation, are you gonna be biking in and out of Charlotte?
No. I have a used car right now that's a medium sized.
Okay, and would that be sufficient for a while?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then what about food? Do you want to eat out all the time? Have you gotten into the COVID world and you love cooking at home? Will you take your lunch to work?
That's the goal. So yes.
Okay, so probably half, maybe half, or mostly at home.
Let's go with half at home. That's more realistic.
Okay. And do you know if your utilities will be included in your rent?
Yes, they are.
Okay, that's great. And then how many devices do you need to have?
Internet and smartphone. Yeah.
Okay. And then the one thing they don't have here, they need to update this is streaming service, but I think that might go under TV, internet, phone bundle.
Okay.
Oh, that might be more expensive. I guess it depends on if you want to do HBO Max or you're good with just Netflix.
I'm good.
And you want to keep that student account as long as you can. So go ahead and reapply and up it if you haven't. So what about personal needs for clothing, cosmetics, haircuts, grooming?
I'm pretty well set on clothes. I would
Okay.
not get too many. But probably cosmetics. Yeah.
Great. All right, just a few more here. Do you need medical care? How about an animal to take care of? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. And then student loans, where would you fall there if you have any student loans? Well, I guess that's an option if you don't have student loans.
I do have student loans. I think the third option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And just so people know, on average, I haven't looked the last year, but generally on average, students who graduate from a UNC public school, public institution like Appalachian, Carolina, East Carolina, are going to have somewhere between 23 and 25,000 in student loans a year. So that's pretty average. Okay. Now, let's talk about how much you think you can set aside for these different items. And there are quite a few in here. It's everything from savings to hobbies to books. So let's just go through each one, what you ideally would like to be able to put away.
So my plan is to move to Charlotte for a year to work and save money and then move to New York. So I
Okay.
want to save a good chunk of money.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
So might $300 a month would put you, or $400 a month would put you pretty close to $5,000 that you'd have available in a year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for, is 5,000.
Okay. All right. So that is ambitious.
Am I putting 5,000 in or 3?
Oh, I think it's per month. I think, isn't that, if you scroll back up, I think you put in 400. Sorry. Yes, each month. So let's put 400 then, Hannah.
Okay.
And then emergency fund, like your apartment gets flooded.
50.
Okay. Okay. And then do you have any charitable giving that you plan to give to? And if not, it's okay, because you are saving to do this big move.
Yeah. I don't really download movies or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. And Geraldine, I think you'll have to put zeros in for those for it to calculate correctly. Let's see, I think. Okay. Are you ever going to go out to eat?
Yes.
And how much a month might you spend?
$200 probably.
Okay. Okay. What about movies, concerts, if you ever get to go those again?
We'll say 50.
Okay. And gifts? Are you a gift giver, Hallmark queen?
I write a mean letter.
That sounds great. So you just need money for stamps.
Yeah.
Okay. And vacation? Probably not, because you're going to move to New York.
Yes.
Okay. Any hobbies? Like, are you a knitter and you need to have a certain fiber from a certain type of llama that it only lives in a certain part of the Andes?
Not necessarily. I am a big crafter, but I have a bunch of materials, so I should be good for a while.
Okay. And any subscriptions, like online subscriptions?
Nope, I bum off of other people's Netflix accounts.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's see how much money you need to make this happen. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. So.
That's okay. Whew.
Yes.
Oh, that's not as unpeaceful as I thought it was going to be.
Yes. So hopefully, I'm pretty sure KFC is paying $15 an hour with a $300 signing bonus. Let's hope that's not where you have to start with your first job, but you could, it would be a stretch, but you could possibly do that. But I think, and Geraldine, you can go back to the presentation now. I think what I really want people to think about is, can you afford to take a certain job? So for instance, my daughter, who is in college, is wanting to stay and live in Chapel Hill this summer, and she wants to sublet a friend's apartment, and that apartment is $700 a month. And I'm like, can you even afford to live there? Are you even going to make enough money to pay the rent? Sometimes you might do something that doesn't make as much money as you want, but are you getting some benefit out of that? Like it's a, you know, you're, well, I'll give you an example of another one of my daughter. She's a theater major. She's dramatic arts. And this year there was no opportunity as a student employed to work with playmakers. So she's doing maintenance in the student union, but she's learning how to use a bandsaw, a jigsaw, a nail gun. All these things will be valuable if she ever gets into the theater world professionally. She might end up having to work on a set, and she's going to know how to do that. So think about being flexible with your plans, but don't sacrifice, you know, you don't want to mortgage your future opportunities just to do something. So Geraldine, we can go to the next one. Know what's available. Geraldine may have already touched on this. Our colleague Deanne just did a quick little search and pulled together these jobs that were just in Handshake over the last week. The Interlochen Arts Camp, which y'all know Interlochen is kind of the creme de la creme of theater prep schools. They're looking for people. The Ringling Museum of Art down in Florida is looking for people. There are also just some instructor positions. I know a lot of camps are still hiring. Are there opportunities where you can get some work that is somewhat related to what you're interested in? We put together a quick list every week of the jobs that have been approved in Handshake over the previous 7 to 10 days. Keith has copies of that, or has that link, and I don't have any problem with him sharing that with y'all, and I'm sure he wouldn't either if you just email him. Then you can go into Handshake and see what those jobs are. But if you don't know what's out there, then it can feel like nothing is available. There are at least, I mean, we've been averaging anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000 jobs a week being put in Handshake. Okay, next slide, Geraldine. Ask for help. It's okay to ask for help, especially if you're going to be the person who's going to help somebody else in the future. And my sense is that you probably are. So I recently was working with a student who said to me, I really want to do this on my own. I really don't want to ask anybody to help me. And I totally understand that. I was that person. I guess technically dropped out of college, had a work permit to work in London. There was a whole agency in London that would have helped me find a job, but I was really stubborn and I didn't want to be around a bunch of American students. I didn't want to be associated as an American, like I stood out like a sore thumb. So I wasn't exactly blending in anyway, but I never went to that organization to get them to help me. And as a result, it took me like a month to find a job, at which point all of my money was almost gone. That was a long time ago, but my point is, get involved, ask people, make sure they know what you're looking for. There's a student I've been working with over this year, and he's connected with several different people, and about once a month he sends an email and says, these are positions I've applied for. If you have any connections with these or information that you can share with me or the hiring manager about me, please do so. And I can't tell you how much it means to get a handwritten note. I had a message or a note from a young woman who doesn't even go to school here that I was helping with her job search, and she sent me a note out of the blue. I would go to bat totally for her, and I can be a reference for her, even though I haven't worked with her in a classroom setting. So don't be afraid to let people know what you need. And then the last piece, it kind of goes along with that in this next slide, Geraldine, is around just taking care of yourself. It's really easy to feel like this job search thing can be all consuming, and you see something and you run down the rabbit hole chasing it, and then somebody sends you something else. And then sometimes you might feel like you're compromising your values and what you know you really want to do just to get a job. Just take care of yourself. If you haven't had your vaccine yet, consider doing that, but be really careful so you don't get COVID. Sleep, eat, pray, maybe that's from a movie, not from here. Exercise, and make sure to take time to reflect and meditate about what you're doing. I actually have a journal that I keep ongoing, where I just kind of, think about, every now and then I'll just spend some time thinking about what my values are. How is the work that I'm doing right now meeting the values that are important to me? How is the work that I'm doing right now meaningful to me? And if it's not, what do I need to shift in my world of work to make sure that where I spend so much of my day is core to who I am and the things that are important to me? And then the last slide I have is a welcome back slide. So you're going to graduate. You may have already graduated, and hopefully you will come back to campus. And we would love to see you at our new Career Development Center, which will be on the second floor of the Student Union, where the Whitewater Lounge used to be, and the Profile Trail lounge area outside McAllister's. And we'd love to hear your story. And we also have a place on our website. When you go to careers.appstate.edu, it'll say students, employers, faculty, staff, and then there's a link for alumni. And these resources are available to you as long as you need them. Make sure you update your Handshake account with your non-ASU email so you can continue to get information from us. And if you need to meet with Geraldine, or you want to meet with me, or you decide, you know what, I know Paulette and Keith don't want to hear this, but you're like, oh, why was I a theater major? I just kind of got into it, and I want to do a career assessment to figure out what else I might be interested in. We can do that. We can do whatever it is pretty much that you need that we have to offer, and that is at no charge to you. So encourage you to take advantage of that, and then also to tell us about how you're doing. There's also a link on our website called Share Your Success or Share Your Story, and you can tell us about what's going on in your world and where you end up. And next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, if you want to drop by the Alumni Center, you can sign up in Handshake you just click appointments, look for Professional Headshot McKinney, come by the Alumni Center. We'll do a professional headshot. Y'all are, in the theater department. I'm sure you already have that anyway, but we'll also have some swag and love to share with you from the Alumni Center as well as from us. So that is all I have to share. So, whoops.
Are there any questions that you all have for Susan or I?
I have a quick question. So if you're wanting to set up a meeting with the Career Development Center, can you just do that over Zoom, or do you need to come in person?
You can absolutely do that over Zoom, Hannah, and I'll be your career coach. So you can make that appointment in Handshake under the appointments tab, and then just kind of click through that, or email me directly. And like I said, I'll put my stuff in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both so much for doing this. It was very helpful.
Yeah, thanks. It was really informative and interesting. So,
Susan, how long can our students keep their appstate.edu email addresses?
It's a year, but we really encourage students to just go ahead and get rid of it. I mean, not get rid of it, but don't depend on it. And here's an example of something you wouldn't want associated with your email address. There's a person who had applied for the physician assistant program at Campbell University, and they had been a student here. And at the time they applied to Campbell, they used their App State email for the application. They got a full ride to Campbell, and they never knew it. They never knew it because it came to their App State email. So go ahead, and if you don't have your personal, whatever it is, Gmail, Yahoo email out there, go ahead and get that one put out on your materials. You don't want someone to call you back and send it to an email that's defunct. That would really stink to lose out on a lead role. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here earlier to meet everybody, but I will catch up with Geraldine. And if you can stop by McKinney next Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be there pretty much the whole day, and I'd love to meet you.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah.
thank you both very much.
If there are no further questions, let me encourage the three students who are here to talk to your classmates and say, hey, this is a pretty good session. Geraldine has recorded it, and we're going to send it to everyone who was invited, whether they want it or not. That way they can kind of look at it. But I really do think the peers would respond better to an email or a text or a Facebook post from you say, guys, if you missed it, you really should look at the video.
Yeah.
And we'll send it to the capstone teachers for the fall and try to do this on at least an annual basis. But I'm more inclined to have you come visit our classes directly, Geraldine and Susan, so they can ask their questions in real time.
Yeah.
We are definitely
Geraldine
looking forward
also
to that
just-
day.
Geraldine also just shared the presentation in the chat, which has all the live links. So
Excellent.
And I just want to say thanks to students who came today. I know I'm in Charleston. I'm going to the beach now. But I have enjoyed just being able to have this little bit of time with you. And I know it's reading day, and just really appreciate you being here. And we will meet with 1 or 100, how many or how few. So just let us know what you need from us.
Thank you very, very, very much.